coming today. We're going to be missing Christina. She usually helps us out a lot as we go along, so I'm sure I'll stumble and fumble along the way. We have some guests here. Roy, we see you. And Beth, this is the first time.
It is.
Our meetings. And I want y'all to know Beth and I have a little bit in common. She was involved in a career and decided she was going to pivot. She became a forester and worked for the U.S. Forest Service and on the Pacific Crest Trail, which I think is pretty cool. That's kind of our equivalent to the Appalachian Trail. So she had some time with that. That's pretty good background. So in any case, welcome everybody. Kind of got a little chill in the air. We got autumn Topsail this weekend, which is a really nice affair. And, you know, I get to, all of us get to volunteer to some extent or another. I got to go out and help set up like Bob did. And turned out to be a really nice community effort. And everybody kind of puts their shoulder to the stone and it's fun. It's really fun. It's a really good opportunity. It looks like the weather, good thing that it wasn't last weekend. We'd have bouncy houses blowing across the road. So it's going to have good weather and looking forward to that. You know, another thing of point is given the weather last week, we need to be feeling pretty daggone thankful. A lot of reports coming out of Buxton, Banffy, and even our neighbors up at North Topsail. Jamie's going to give us a full report, but all things considered, nobody's home was threatened. They lost 8 houses at Buxton, had 10 in the water that had not yet come down. A lot of debris in the water. And my thanks are to BIS committee that started 12 years ago. And we're just happen to be the beneficiaries of their good efforts then, and I hope to continue that going forward. On a similar note, one of the, I guess, newspapers or news focuses I watch is the Coastal Review. And if you're not a subscriber to the Coastal Review, you might want to take a look at it. It's published by the Coastal Federation. It usually has pretty balanced reporting. They've had some awards, but one of the more recent articles was about Ocean Isle Beach. And I'll bring this to your attention. I forwarded a copy of that article to BIS committee, and there was they put in a terminal groin, and I happen to have gone to that and looked at it as part of Coastal Resources Commission. And the terminal groin is at the east side of the island. I have a hard time getting north and south and east and west, you know, when I'm thinking coastal. But the groin was on the east side of the island, and they've suffered a lot of erosion east of that island. And coincident with the groin put in, there was also a development that went in the inlet hazard area. And they're having some difficulty with that. So I just point that out as something to kind of keep you abreast of coastal issues. That's a pretty good thing to look at. I guess the second thing on our agenda is public comments. Do we have any public comments? Okay. The next thing, item number 3, is approval of the agenda.
We don't have anything to add. We're good.
We're good with? All right.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Conflict of interest. Does any committee member have a conflict of interest concerning any item on the agenda?
Nope. No.
A conflict of interest, all righty. I trust you all have had an opportunity to look at the minutes from the last meeting, which was on September the 18th.
Motion to approve the minutes is written.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Like sign. Okey-doke. Now, update from TI Coastal. Jamie?
Thank you guys very much for having me here today. As always, it's a pleasure to report to everyone about the condition of the beach and kind of updates what we have going on. Happy to answer any questions that you may have throughout the whole process. As William alluded to, we had a pretty significant coastal storm this past weekend. Typical nor'easter where you have not super strong winds, but a really long duration event where it's multiple days, and that consistent northeast wind drives wave energy way up. Currents are much stronger because of the northeast component of the wind bringing sand along the beach and taking it elsewhere. And it coincidentally fell in sync with the October tide cycles, which are historically the highest high tides that we have throughout the year. So add into the fact that while we didn't have any major rainfall and hurricanes this hurricane season as of yet, we're not on one because we're not completely out of the woods for that yet. We did have multiple storm systems pass offshore, which distributed, again, a lot of wave energy to the coastal coastline. While it doesn't cause immediate visible erosion, it's almost like in a boxing match, body blows, or you're kind of slowly wearing down your opponent. They're shifting the profile. They're making the nearshore beach kind of go offshore in the sandbars a little bit because of the elevated wave energy. And then when you get a storm like we had this past weekend, that just kind of exacerbates the erosion that maybe we have been seeing slowly over the last month and a half or so with the storms passing offshore. So it was kind of a coincidence, a series of events that led to the extreme erosion we saw in places on the south end of the island, and then some of your neighbors to the north had some more significant issues just because of the condition of the beach going into this event. All that being said, I went out on Monday, first thing at low tide, and started doing beach assessment of your Topsail beach. Stopped at every single one of the crossovers and walked down, took pictures on looking both north and south, visually assessing everything that kind of went on. I don't know if anybody's walked out to the south end by Serenity Point, but there was extreme erosion of the natural dune system in Serenity Point. It's an area that's kind of inside that inlet influenced erosional area. That's why there are inlet hazard areas adjacent to each side of the inlet, because those are naturally areas that have increased erosion due to the tidal influence of water running into the inlet and then back out again. Not to get too technical, but on flood tides, meaning incoming tide, generally there's a side channel that runs parallel to the beach and goes into the inlet system. It's called a marginal flood channel, and that channel erodes the shoreline adjacent or parallel to the beach. And brings it into the inlet, and then during the ebb tide, the outgoing tide, all of that material is kind of brought out of the inlet to form the ebb shoal, which is the half moon shaped shoal that you get on the outside of the inlet system. So it's a natural flow of a tidal inlet. You get sand coming in, some of it goes to the flood shoal, which is on the inside, which is where you'd see the shoaling between Topsail Creek and the beach. And then on the ebb tide, which is outgoing, you get sand distributed on that ebb shoal outside. All that said, the area of Serenity Point, which is outside of our project area, did experience pretty significant erosion, probably the worst I've seen it, and I started working with the town back in 2009 or so. So it's pretty bad on the south end. It is outside of the project area. The project ends at about, McLeod? McLeod, sorry. Pronunciation is not great on that one. About McLeod Street, that's where the taper is, because that's where the houses, and I'm sure I don't know the development on the very south end of the name of it, but the houses that are down there kind of curve away from the oceanfront beach. So because they had traditionally a large natural dune area in front of them, we don't nourish inside of that area. Money's better spent further north where the houses are closer to the oceanfront beach. Between McLeod Street and Sea Vista, there was a scarp, which is the vertical drop off in the sand. It's called the Darby Scarp. It trended from about 4 or 5 feet at accesses 19 and 20, down to maybe a foot or two at Drum Street, and then slowly got lower. By the time you got to see this, it was probably only about a foot tall, but there was a slight scarp there. Sea Vista does still have a double dune system in front of it. They've got plenty of protection. I'm not terribly worried about their another storm coming and impacting any kind of upland structure, but their beach, their upland beach, or the berm that we try to preserve as a buffer zone is quite diminished at this point. Once you got north of Sea Vista, things really looked pretty good, honestly. I'd say 85% of the beach looks in very good condition. It performed as we wanted it to, where water washed up on top of the berm, dissipates that wave energy, and you don't get any impacts to the primary dune, the one we built a couple years ago, or the dune that existed after Hurricane Florence, which is the steeper one that's underneath of the stairs. So the beach performed extremely well, did kind of what we want. The south end has always traditionally been a higher erosional rate, again, because of the inlet system. We tried to compensate for that with the last project we did in 23-24 with Norfolk dredging by building the berm, which is the flat part of the beach, out an extra 50 to 75 feet on the southern area. That obviously was not a great solution because that area continued to erode just as quickly as it did before, so it's all gone. So we're going to have to put our minds together and come up with another solution to try to help the erosion on the south end be slower, mitigate some of that erosional tendency so that we can have their beach remain in better condition between projects. So just something to think about as we go forward. Our beach management plan is not set in stone. We're constantly looking at what we can do better, what we can modify to make things more successful. And ultimately, we want to stretch the time period between projects out for a financial standpoint from the town. Having projects every 2 years is not really feasible financially. Our goal is to have them every 4 or 5 years, but we want to sustain the beach and the channel system at a state that it is good for the town between those project cycles. Additionally, environmental standpoint, you don't want to constantly be dredging channels and burying invertebrates in the surf zone. So the environmental side, we want to kind of let systems recover in between project cycles. So again, not only financially, but environmentally, we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can. I pass on a full report and photos to Christina after the survey on Monday. So she hopefully figure those out. If not, I'm sure she will shortly. We did start with a coastal monitoring survey this morning. Went full on with that to track and document how much erosion there was. There was some, as I understand, correspondence between the county to figure out what the total storm losses were to see if it would trigger a declaration for the storm event. If a declaration were to be made, it's based on how many dollars of damage there was based on the storm, and erosion of sand contributes a massive amount of money to that because sand is expensive to put back onto the beach. So it's a little bit of a risk if we do the survey. It may not result in anything, but it also may be the trigger to bump a declaration into play for Pender County to see if they would be reimbursement for sand that was lost during the storm. So you might see us, well, today we have, I know people pointed out there was a drone that flew over top. We're actually using our drone with LiDAR technology on it. It is going to map 100% of the dune and upland beach between the houses all the way down to the water line. So instead of doing our traditional transects of the upland every 1,000 feet, we will have 100% coverage of that on a almost within a square meter. I think there's 300 data points. So instead of having a couple of points every 1,000 feet, every square meter is going to have 300 points that represents the elevation. So we will be able to see in extreme detail all of the ups and downs. There's a couple of ridge and runnel systems on the beach, which is where sand water overwashes the berm, gets close to the dune and kind of pools there during storms, and then runs along shore and runs out. So you'll see a couple little weird divots in the face of the beach, and that's where the water that overwashed that was trapped by the dune runs out. It's called a ridge and runnel system. So it'll be kind of cool to see those in the LiDAR data. We've got 2 boats working today that are surveying the offshore portion, and then are going to continue to survey all of the inland channels to see what kind of shoaling there was, inside of those channels, just to kind of document where sand loss we have on the beach is, and make sure that's corresponding to what we're seeing in the channels, as far as shoaling rates go. That was a lot that I just talked about, so happy to pause for a second and answer any questions people have about anything I just chatted about.
Question.
Yes, sir.
When you just showed us a picture of it, what do you call it, groin ball?
Terminal Brown?
Terminal ball.
Yeah.
Is that something that I think Sugar 8's been talking about doing that, and the ones that are in, like down in, like Wrightsville, I think it would work very well.
So Wrightsville has a jetty inlet, and so Masonboro Inlet has jetties on either side, which are different than groins. The terminal groin is a structure that is placed at the very terminal end, the end of an island, generally the downdrift side, or it can be used for isolated inlet-induced erosion, like North Topsail Beach is looking at one to fix the north end problems that they have there, because a lot of that sand is going back into New River Inlet. North Carolina, about probably 8 years ago, and I'm probably not correct on that term, but a couple of years ago, they authorized the exploratory use of terminal groins. North Carolina, for as long as I can remember, has had a ban on hard structures. So you can do soft solutions like beach nourishment and dredging to fix erosional problems, but they wanted to ban all hard structures like riprap on the shoreline, seawalls, groin fields. A couple of jetty inlets exist, but most of the time those are not going to be allowed anymore. Wrightsville Beach has jetties, but they have a weir in one of the jetties, which is a designed low area to allow sand to bypass the jetty system itself and go into Masonboro Inlet. That area that's inside of the weir is where the Corps of Engineers dredges sand from to put it back onto, or historically dredged sand from to put it back onto Wrightsville Beach. So that was the design of Masonboro was, okay, we know sand transported from north to south. So instead of having the groin or the jetty completely block that sand flow, we're going to allow a small amount to go into the inlet. And then we will dredge that. That'll be the borrow site for nourishment projects for Wrightsville Beach and for Masonboro. There's a stipulation that if you dug 1 million yards, 300,000 of that would have to go to Masonboro, which is a natural island, to compensate for the overall losses that the jetty is causing to Masonboro because of the stop of the littoral transport. So that's the Wrightsville Beach jetty system. There have been a couple of terminal groins that have been installed. One is at Ocean Isle that William has showed a picture of that has done a fantastic job fixing areas to the west of it, but areas to the east have experienced extreme erosion. And the idea of a terminal groin is that it is designed as a leaky system, so it allows sand to bypass it, to naturally continue this flow. So when you build it, you're supposed to backfill behind it to what the equilibrium position would be, and that would allow sand to just naturally continue to flow down the beach as it would, but it traps sand against it that helps protect the houses on the updrift side. A really good example of a terminal groin that is performing phenomenally well is on Bald Head Island. If you look at along the Cape Fear River, I don't know if Rochelle, can you pull up Google Maps if I put you on the spot? Possibly. The groin at Bald Head Island was built low enough and not so far out that it completely blocked sand from bypassing it. So it's doing its job in protecting South Beach, which is what it was designed to do, but it still continues to allow sand to bypass it to go to West Beach, which is along the Cape Fear River. So if you zoom in up to down a little bit with your cursor, right in the center of the map there.
You got it. You can point at it, Jamie.
Yeah, right here. So you see right here, right there is the end of the terminal groin at Bald Head Island. So that continues perpendicular to the beach back up into where the houses are. You can't see it. You can see the very end of it, but the entire structure is completely covered with sand because it was built low enough that sand can flow over the top of it but it's still doing its job of protecting the beach that is the downdrift area. Before this was installed, the houses that were along here were completely vulnerable and about to be eroded. If you go into Google Earth and look at the same area, there's a timeline slider at the top that you can slide and look at previous years. And so you'll see the beach, what kind of condition it was in before, before the terminal groin went in. Once they put it in, it's done its job of protecting sand. If you look at Ocean Isle, if you look at the aerial right now, the terminal groin, you can see the rocks are sticking up probably a foot or two above the elevation of the sand, and it extends very far out where you don't see sand all the way to the end of it. So it is blocking essentially 100% of the sand that's going up against it, which is what New Jersey experimented. If you've ever been to New Jersey, you'll see a groin field, which is numerous structures in line along the beach face. And so people experimented with this, saying, hey, if I can trap the sand in front of my house, the beach will build out. And the neighbor said, well, they're chopping all my sand, so I need to build a groin too, so it traps all the sand. So you see a beach that goes up and down, and it makes a weird little pattern because, yeah, exactly, a sawtooth pattern on the beach, because there were numerous groins that were built. Every house had to build one, and it created just a hardened structure mess on a beach where you just suddenly have rocks everywhere, and you've got extreme erosion and then a whole lot of accretion, extreme erosion, a lot of accretion. So that's one of the reasons North Carolina went against that kind of policy, because they didn't want to have to deal with individual permits for those hard structures and deal with that erosion that's caused by, one person deciding to put in a structure to trap sand in front of their house. Terminal groins, when they're designed like this for bald head, do a fantastic job, but you have to be very careful with the design of it and make sure that it is doing and performing the way that it was intended to be designed. So yeah, in isolated circumstances and with the correct design, I think terminal groins are a fantastic method to stop erosion in isolated areas. It's not going to fix beach erosion on an entire beach, but if you have a hotspot area that is constantly, one little area that's a couple thousand feet. But yeah, this is with geotubes. This is, sorry, Rochelle pulled it up in Google Earth. You can see the sawtooth pattern. For a long time, bald head did geotubes, which were like big sandbags essentially. And that's what a groin field would look like, but they did it with temporary structures, not permanent rocks. So that's the same kind of look you would get with a groin field. And then if you can click through the years forward from here, you can see how bad the erosion is in front of these houses. The geotubes are kind of doing their job. And then that would probably be, that might have been the beach nourishment project, because I don't see a structure on that one. That one, you can see the groin in out. Yeah, so there's the end of the groin right now. So that's been built probably in the dry after a nourishment project, because it's cheaper to build in the dry. So you would do a nourishment project, dig a trench, place the rocks inside at the level of the beach fill that the beach naturally wants to be at, and then let the system kind of do its thing. So from here forward, you should not see any erosion, I don't think, on that beach area. It would just continue to build out, and then see how it's bypassing and starting to build the sandbars on the other side. And then it should just continue to grow out from there, because it's performing as it should.
Can you tell us again what North Carolina began to allow in the process 8 years ago?
They allowed, there's a limited number, and I can't remember if it's 4 or 5 terminal groin structures. And it was basically, I think they identified 4 or 5 different locations they thought specifically would work well at. One of them being Ocean Isle, one of them being Bald Head, I think North Topsail, Figure 8, and there's probably one more that I'm not thinking, Oregon Inlet. At first, there was a big political pushback from environmental groups against them. So Figure 8 was leading the way for a long time on the terminal groin system. It was at the north end of Figure 8. Rich Inlet kind of went to a more favorable configuration where the ebb shoal welded to the north end and protected the houses there. So they kind of backed away because they were getting a lot of political pressure and from the environmental groups that were saying they weren't going to let it get through. So they backed away from doing a terminal structure at that point. But there are still 3 or so that are in the process. North Topsail has been working through the EIS, environmental impact statement, for terminal growing for probably 5 or 6 years. And I think we're still a year or 2 away from having that approved. It's a very lengthy process. Full EIS, environmental impact statement, is necessary, and that takes multiple years to get through.
You know, I'm new, so I stick my foot in my mouth quite often, but does our inlet ever enter this conversation for the future for any garden structure?
It's something we can consider. Definitely, I don't ever want to throw anything off the table, especially if we have just the southern 1,500 feet of the beach from Sea Vista to the south end, the access 20 are the biggest problem areas. You have to be aware of unforeseen consequences, because the way your beach nourishment program works is by recycling sand that goes into the channel system. So if you put a hardened stop on the beach for that, and it doesn't come back into the channels as quickly as we need it to, or the erosion on the beach might not be as much. You also may not have available sands that you would have matching from the shallow draft inlet fund to pay for. So you have to weigh the pros and cons to everything. It's also, while most of that is covered, you still do have rocks that are exposed offshore, which is not always, something that people want to have. It has to be anchored pretty far landward, so it's going to be anchored well beyond what the primary dune is, because you don't ever want to risk it being erosion happening on the backside of it and causing big issues. So, you have to run that structure pretty far back.
Would we be a candidate for a growing wall?
I think that it's open to anybody. I think there are beaches that probably need one more than Topsail does right now. But it is definitely something that we can look at in the future as a tool in the toolbox.
Price wise, it's a lot more expensive to keep pumping sand, isn't it, every couple of years?
It is, and it's going to fix a small area. So the area that it's going to help is relative to how far out in the ocean it goes, because think of the beach coming back at an angle from that structure. You can't build a mile out and say, okay, we're going to fill this much sand into it, because that would, backfilling that kind of template would be just insanely expensive. There's not enough sand. So you're limited to how far out you can place the structure into the surf zone. And then depending on how far out it goes, is how many houses it would protect. So if we were looking at protecting from up to the Sea Vista Hotel, then you wouldn't have to go too far out, but it doesn't help anybody north of that. And that erosion still continues on the other 85% of the beach that's north of Sea Vista. So again, not something that to say that we would never consider it. It's something definitely to be considered, but we have to be careful how we approach that.
I'm curious because, some of us have been confronted by residents in Serenity Point, 53 units, 54 units,
54.
54.
And I'm aware of their legal setup with their HOA and all that, but they're still part of our town, our beach, and trying to figure out what the appropriate conversation is here, because there's a separation right now, and I'd like to find a way to open that conversation and find more common ground and transparency between them and us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then they're below ground, right? Versus the inlets are above ground, go way out in the ocean. They're unattractive.
The jetty is designed for navigation, 100% for navigation purposes. So it's designed to not let sand into a navigational channel. So it's, to keep the sand from going into an inlet to prevent dredging inside of the inlet. So those are built really high and don't let any sand through at all.
Jamie, That is unquestionably, in my mind, one of the best explanations I've heard. I think you did a real good job. I learned a lot. I had never seen a picture of the one at Bald Head. By the way, Jamie just got his engineering certificate and it shows. So congratulations on that, but that was really a great explanation. You can take off from that and further consideration.
I saw that beach this summer and I was just scratching my head trying to figure out where it came from because I'd never seen it.
Down the
before.
ball,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's nice.
Didn't down the byways, didn't y'all or somebody do a presentation on this 5 years ago or something like that?
Olsen Engineering is the ones that did the design. They've been working with Baldhead for a long time, so it might have been one of their, somebody in their.
I remember seeing a whole bunch of stuff about that.
They've done a really good job. I am nervous about what the structure at Ocean Isle will do for the opinion of terminal dwellings in North Carolina. That's gonna be a difficult battle with environmental groups when they have that as a showcase of what it can do.
You said it wasn't built correctly, the one in Ocean Isle.
In my opinion, I think it's a little bit too tall and too long and not letting enough sand through.
Well, I might add, I went to the Coastal Resources Commission meeting that was in Ocean Isle, and they took us for a tour, and they have just finished it. And at the same time, they'd also done beach renourishment to the east of it, and they were getting ready to do it on the west of it. And there was also a development being put in, and now we're seeing the consequences of that.
Yeah.
It could be difficult.
Any idea in the world what something like that would cost to do it east and here southeast end?
I do not off the top of my head.
It's much cheaper than sand, right?
I
They go up a lot faster.
You still need to provide the sand on the backside of it, so dredging is, you're not gonna eliminate dredging by doing this. So it would be the cost of the structure plus dredging to backfill the structure plus continue to nourish the beach on the rest of the beach. So you will still have, you're not gonna eliminate the need for beach nourishment by doing a structure on the south end. It'll be, but again, it can be a tool that we can look at in the future as something that we may investigate. And I'm not saying it's it's completely off the table. I don't have the answers about how much it would cost. And I haven't done a cost study to figure out what the installation costs and maintenance costs. And then what it would alleviate for dredging needs on the beach side. So I don't want to.
With all the studies and stuff, what issues we might have down there probably wouldn't warrant. I mean, I don't think we get consideration for anything that you'd have to really put some time into an argument about doing it. To me, I don't think right now our issue, they're going to say, hey, you don't have an issue compared to
Right,
5, 6, 7 other people.
right.
So it's be a waste of time right now.
Mhm.
Anything else for Jamie? Very good report. I know that over the last several days, you had to get on the beach and scramble to take a look. I know that there was concerns about the cost of doing the survey, but just so you all know, that cost is built into the contract already. And I suppose you indicated that you're doing some sound side surveys as well, so that we'll know what the condition of the inlet is.
Correct. We'll know the condition of the inlet, know what's happening at the hot splash flowing area that we've always had where the Banks channel comes into the inlet. That kind of confluence is always kind of shored up pretty quickly. Banks connector channel area, we're going to look at that as well.
Well, I was told that Stewart was able to get out with no problem, so
That's
there you go. And Stewart, he's a commercial fisherman that does charters on a fairly large boat on in and out of the inlet. So
I figured it may be okay because there's not a big commercial fisherman representation today.
so far. All right, thank you very much,
You're
Jamie.
very welcome.
Connie, you have an update on the BIS fund for us?
Yes, sir. Okay, when we look at our revenue sheet, as you see that we did receive 383,148.81. That is the remainder of the 25% of the IESIS money that made up of the 1,643. We also did have parking revenue for the month of August there for 18,177. We're at 57% for that for the year. We have just mailed out our taxes, so you should hopefully start seeing some ad valorem tax revenue coming in. The Pender County accommodations look right good right now. I don't think there'll be a problem there, hopefully. And we are still earning interest, which I'm very proud to say, for 12,159 this month, and we only estimated 70,000, and we're already at 35,705. That money is in Cedar's account. There are various ones. There's more than one, and so there should not be if the rate goes down, we shouldn't see that just yet because they're in for a 12-month period. So our revenue total was 562,416.84. And then when you look over at the expenses, there's nothing out of the ordinary in the expenses this month. You see under staff development, $1,100. That is your North Carolina Beach Inlet and Waterway Association dues for the year. Professional services and audit is pretty much made up of your the two lobbyists that we have that we pay a portion of that to Surf City. So that's $4,950. And then our legal, that's just our legal expense that we do a portion of our legal expense for the month, which is $300. So the expenses for the month were $6,350. When you look over at your fund balance sheet, you're going to see that we did hit $7,028,218. And the majority of doing that, we were still at, would have been at $6,645,000. But when we did get our $383,000, the town got that. We did hit the 7 million mark. So everything seems to be doing pretty good right now with that, as far as we can tell. No surprises, hopefully. Any questions?
I don't have any. That's a good report. Thank you very much, Connie. Anybody else got any questions or comments?
If I could add, we will be starting pool fund maintenance repair of structures here soon to rebuild some of the crossovers. If you remember last year, we did number 8, number 13, number 17, and 19. This year, so far, we're doing number 2, number 11, number 12. We're hoping 2A and 5 will also get done this year, but I don't have the final numbers on the quotes yet to commit to that.
All right, so you have $100,000 in that account.
Yes.
Can you tell us what you're doing?
So on number 2 and number 11, that is just the Oceanside staircase on the backside. The rest of the crossover is in really good shape. And that will be the same with 2A and 5 if we have enough funds to do those. Number 12 will be a full rebuild. It's starting to get overrun by sand. So it's going to have, it'll be rebuilt with steps. Right now, it's currently a ramp, but it's, to do that rebuild, we have to go steps up and over.
So that was handicap accessible, and now it will not be.
12 is not. I mean, somewhat it is because it's a ramp, but it's technically not a handicap designated access.
So we're not losing.
Hey, Connie, going back to the interest earned, since we've got 50% of what was budgeted in one quarter, does that mean that we'll get about 140,000 interest in the fiscal year? Why are we getting so much?
Well, it's because right now there is the interest is like at 4.26, 4.23. It's going to depend on when they mature, and I don't have that right in front of me, but we should earn some good interest. Yes, I won't say 140, but we should more than. I would certainly think 100.
Kind of got like experience, she'll never overestimate income. Thank you, Connie.
Mhm.
All righty. Moving on to the next item. Rocky Mountain project update. You said you had a little bit that Christina gave.
Yes, sir. Of course, there was a stakeholders meeting, but she said that Jonathan Hinkle had presented the final design on October the 2nd to the stakeholders group. The group supports the plan. The town will continue to look for funding opportunities to implement the design.
I know this is not on our agenda, but we've certainly had a lot of king tide, high tide. And, we've had a lot of sound side flooding. Saw a video of Carolina Boulevard that was pretty much underwater. And a lot of pushback from Rocky Mount stakeholders group is because they've been seeing that for a while, but it's been exasperated here recently. And I asked Rochelle to pull up, you know, we have a tide gauge right out here at Bush Marine, it used to be at the municipal dock. And I asked her to go all the way back to the beginning of August so you could see that here in the last couple of weeks, it's really been exasperated. And the Rocky Mountain design was to go to 5.5 feet. And I know we hit 5.9 feet one time. We may have hit 6 feet on another time. So, you know, we will hear increasing comments about sound side flooding and what we're gonna be able to do about that. And I don't know that we need to broach that issue right now, but it is something to consider going forward. Any comments or questions? All right, so the next item on the agenda is Islandwide Beach Project.
Okay, Christina left a little short message here, which is Mr. Michael Baker is the contractor for the whole project for the island. And he began treatment on August the 18th in Topsail Beach. They did 3 different application processes. They went back to the site 6 weeks later to determine which application process was the most successful. They came back last week to continue treatment, starting at North Topsail Beach and working south to Surf City. But unfortunately, their work was cut short due to the nor'easter that came through the area. They have not given us a date yet for their next visit.
What was the, I know it's a 3-town grant. Was that $690,000 for a 2-year period?
Or that. It's like 900.
I think it was like 800 and something, but of course, we budgeted 661,168.75. And of course, the town's portion of that was 178, so that would put it right at 800 and something.
Thank you.
We have received some of the revenue, but of course, we've not paid out anything to Mr. Baker at all.
And that application will drop off once the plant quits transpiring. Which means the flow of nutrients back and forth will quit, so there's no sense in it. All right. Any other questions about that?
Just one real quick, just to note, North Towson saw extreme erosion during the nor'easter that we had, and a lot of that erosion was in the area of the St. Regis Resort, and points north. That area had a tremendous amount of vitex on the dunes. And the dune is now half gone, which meant that a lot of the vitex went into the ocean. Which means it can be spread very easily around the island. So be cautious as far as the spread of vitex in the next year or so, because a lot of that was waterborne during the storm and then spread out all over the place. So there may be an abundance of new propagation in the spring.
And we can blame North Topsail when that happens.
I think went to Lee Island and it kind of.
It shows we all become better at identifying the plant. It's much easier to pull it when it's new and young, so.
Righty. Topsail Island Shoreline Protection Commission, update is the next meeting is October the 23rd, which is next Thursday at 2:00. It will be held at the Surf City Town Hall. An agenda for that meeting will go out tomorrow. A couple items related to that is, we talked about the Surf City 50-year beach nourishment project being delayed. Congressman Rouser really went toe to toe with the Army Corps of Engineers about that delay. And then so they gave him a 120-day extension, and now they're saying, well, the government shut down, so it might go longer. So we would have hoped that they would have been able to go to bid and start this year, but now it's looking probably like next year. Some questions came up about where their borrow areas are for that project, and they're all offshore. Their GRR report is on Surf City's website in case you want to take a look. There was a meeting with Carson Smith related to some of the Topsail Island Shoreline Protection state goals. Carson Smith was able to put a study, but it hasn't gone into the budget because right now they're stymied with the budget. They can't come to agreement over a number of things, but that oyster lease study is not yet budgeted because the budget's been put off, but it is, oyster lease, correct myself, the oyster lease study is in the farm bill, which may advance. And Brett Jackson kind of rides hard over that, and he is in favor of that. The beach in management plan, BIMP, which is supposed to give us an economic analysis of the financial impact of our coastal communities, is not yet in a budget, and that's a $500,000 thing. And we talked about the derelict vessel, abandoned derelict vessel, and some questions about shallow draft inlet fund, making sure that none of that money escapes and goes to other uses. So that was a pretty big deal. And the last thing that we discussed with him was, depending on how FEMA comes out, we need you guys to have our back. So that's a brief update on that. So if you're interested and want to attend or listen in, that meeting will be next Tuesday at 2:00. Other meetings that you may be interested in is the NC Bowways meeting, which is October 30th and 31st, and that will be at the Loft in Wilmington. It's always a very informative meeting about all things coastal. It's a good group, and I hope some of our membership will go to that. I know Joe Bella's going. I think he may be going too. And then the CRC meeting will be November the 19th and 20th, and our 30-year beach management plan is on the agenda. And Jamie tells us that they found it to be complete. And then Jamie and Chris will be giving the presentation for that on our behalf.
Chris will be officially the one presenting. I'll be there in moral support.
And I will be too.
Where is that meeting?
That is going to be in.
We'll find out.
It's close.
All righty. Are there any other questions or comments? Any public comments or questions?
Yep.
Yes, sir.
A couple things on, and this might be for Jamie. I know we're doing the analysis of sand loss, and the area to the south at Sorrento Point is not included in our study, but if we have a sand loss there, is it included in a possible reimbursement coming through the county? And if we're looking at what was lost and the value of it, is that included?
No, it's only losses from a nourishment project. So within the engineered beach area is where the losses would be accounted for.
So if we brought sand back in there, it would be on our ticket.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Given that Surf City may have lost more sand than we did, and they do decide to go ahead with or assistance with reimbursement, would we be short-sighted on that? They only focus on Surf City and not us?
No, it would be, once that threshold is tripped by monetary losses, and Connie, correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right.
Once that threshold is tripped for monetary losses due to a storm event, it would be each community being reimbursed for the amount that they are owed.
Okay. One last thing, this is mainly for the board. This last storm brought coastal flooding and Sunnyside flooding to the forefront. And we do have some problems here, but we have a possibility of looking at it more comprehensively. And TI Coastal over the past has created a LiDAR survey of all of our Sunnyside ponds. So we have elevations at that point. And we can look at the gauge data for tidal, look at some of the NOAA information, and determine when and if a flood will happen and how deep it would be on our residents in that area or roads. On top of that, if we model that same information and we decide to put a bulkhead somewhere to actually keep the sand out if we can, it will give us what that's going to do to the lands around it. So we can take a more comprehensive approach at it and be more proactive. But I think that needs to come to this board. So I'm going to, at the next meeting, try to get the approval of the board members to bring this to y'all's attention so y'all can bird dog it on through champion it.
Rochelle. I asked Rochelle to tee up that LiDAR survey.
Oh, good.
So y'all can take a look at this work that was done back in 2022.
Sorry about throwing
Yeah. I'm getting old enough, I get my centuries mixed up.
Actually, use flashlights back then, used to be LiDAR data.
Yeah, that's right. But it looks like it's right up there on that number 12.
Well, this isn't me. This is technical difficulties.
Oh.
That's it.
Well, while Rochelle is maybe going to get it up for us, they have it color coded as to the height, going all the way from south end of the island all the way up to the town line. And even though it's color coded, which is just by feet, the data is probably in there by inches.
Yes.
I'm glad to learn that, Mayor. That's good information.
It'll work. I know TI Coastal can probably handle the entire project. Probably have to go outside for the modeling. But if we could expand on their contract to have that, I don't know if that's possible. We just need to discuss how do we move forward with it.
Your website, though.
It's on the website.
It is.
If you go into the BIS part of the website, it's under useful information. And you click on that and it will come up and it will show from south to north.
LIDAR.
LIDAR?
Yeah.
What's that stand for?
Light detection and ranging. So uses, instead of sound pulse like normal sonar, uses light pulses and actually from those surfaces.
That's that gizmo you have up on that boat up high, right?
Yeah, when we did that, we had a vessel mounted one, and now we're using a drone with a LiDAR sensor attached to the bottom of it.
Same equipment, piece of
It's
equipment?
different equipment. The one on the boat, actually, somebody broke and we tried to solder it together and it smoked and ended up.
So like around the breezeway and the assembly building and, where Kim Quinn lives, that, when you're out there boating at real king high tides, I mean, just naturally, the water's there and then we get the storm, but I know that a lot of those houses through there, it came all the way up to their foundation this past storm.
So that's what the intention of that survey was to look at the elevations along the backside and see if we could identify low swales that would be,
if you just raise their walls and have a negative, what do you call that one that, you know, typically you want your bulkhead and then the dirt to go higher, but you know, if you can prevent king tide from coming in, but then once we get like a hurricane and everything, then it's a negative bowl effect and are you doing more damage than not?
No,
If
you
you-
have weep holes that go the opposite direction, allow water to come back out, so you're not holding it by the bulkhead. The problem is that it's such an extensive area, so you could have one person, you know, if they're at 6, they
Yeah.
raise their elevation up to 6.5 or 7, their neighbors are still at 6, they're gonna get flooding from their neighbor. So it's looking at connecting areas of that same elevation, so you essentially fortify at the same elevation all the way
From a
across.
high point to a high point.
Exactly, but then it's gonna be multiple neighbors together to work and build everything up at one time. So that's where it gets a little bit complicated in implementing something.
Yeah, right. Thank you for bringing that up,
Sure.
and look forward to direction from Board of Commissioners.
Yeah, y'all will be busy.
We'll probably be the first to know them. All righty, any other comments, questions? Given that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
In favor, say aye. Like sign? Thank you very much.
Good meeting, man.
Thank you.
Good meeting. Good meeting. Thank you, Jamie. That's great.
Very well.
That was a great explanation. It was.
Yes.
Right.